assess the performance of the 8th National Assembly. But having been part of the 8th National Assembly and having been part of the activities of the 8th National Assembly in the past 17 months, I will say from my own personal point of view that the 8th National Assembly has done very well. One major characteristic of this 8th National Assembly has been the determination of the 8th National Assembly to assert the independence of the legislature. Of course, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria envisaged that the three arms of government should be independent of each other, but they will collaborate for the good governance of the country. The executive arm of government in one hand, the legislative arm of government in the second hand, and the judiciary, which is the third arm of government. Our Constitution was prepared with an intention that these three arms of government should be independent of each other so that they were able to discharge their various functions without interference from each other. Of course, that noble intention was to give whatever that will be done in Nigeria the best dispassionate consideration by the three arms, So I can say without fear of equivocation and contradiction that what I witnessed in the past 17 months, I was an active participant in this National Assembly, was a clear determination by the legislature to discharge its mandate, as given to her by the Constitution. Of course, any effort to achieve this guaranteed independence by the Constitution will be misconstrued by a lot of people. The executive arm of government, with enormous powers conferred on it by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, will sometimes want to dictate to the legislature. And when such thing happens and you have a leadership that is determined to ensure that everybody does not cross the line, of course, there will be frosty relationship, which ought not to be there. So I think the 8th National Assembly has given a lot of meaning to the democracy which we practice as a nation. The legislature oversees the activities of the executive arm of government. The powers given to the legislature are quite enormous as well. The idea is to check the activities of the executive arm. That is why the Constitution made it mandatory that the National Assembly must approve every expenditure that the executive arm of government will incur on behalf of Nigeria. The bill on any expenditure must come to the National Assembly in the for appropriation. It's a very huge responsibility. The executive arm of government cannot spend a dime in Nigeria without getting the approval of the National Assembly. That noble intention is to ensure that money is judiciously and prudently utilized in the activities of government and in meeting the needs of the Nigerian people. The other one is oversight functions, which the Constitution confers on the National Assembly. All the agencies of government in operation are subjected to oversight functions by the National Assembly. The idea is also to ensure that the various agencies of government will be very prudent in the discharge of their core mandates. So you can see that the Constitution was well intended, by giving this responsibility. Again, is that the Senate, where I belong to in the past 17 months, also enjoys that responsibility. We're not enjoying, also exercises that responsibility to confirm certain appointments of people to various arms, various agencies of government, So the president will choose people that will serve in various commissions and agencies, subject to the confirmation by the Senate. These things are clearly designed to ensure that, for example, the federal character principle that is enshrined in our Constitution will be observed in making such important appointments, so that every part of Nigeria will be accommodated in major and key appointments of the President of Nigeria. So you can see that principally the two arms of government, the executive and the legislature, are independent, but they must work together harmoniously for the good governance of Nigeria. So looking at the activities in the past 17 months, because that's where I will limit my assessment, I can tell you that contrary to misguided views, this very Senate and indeed the National Assembly had acted very patriotically, to ensure that Nigeria is governed in the best way and with the best practices, So you can see that I would say that most of the requests sent by the President of Nigeria to the Nigerian Senate in the past 18 months were passed. None was treated with maybe lack of care. All of them, if there were issues, the issues were raised, discussed, and sent back to the President, and if he made adjustments, they'll come back, it will go through. The executive bills that have come here have all succeeded, So on that level, I'll tell you that there was no reason for bickering. There were some issues before I came, like the confirmation of the EFCC chairman, which the Senate, I was outside then, could not approve. Again, it was because of some people who are helping to advise the presidency on their powers. Constitutional provisions are very easy to read, interpret, and understand. But sometimes people try to misguide decision makers and then want to rubbish what is very clearly stated in the Nigerian Constitution. And when such things happen, you see this altercation, disagreement, litigations, and so on and so forth. I was here last year when the report of the appointment of members of the EFCC was brought to the Senate for confirmation. And precisely the report was considered on the 11th of December, 2018. You were in the chamber that day. I was one who opposed the confirmation for the fact that the nominees did not reflect federal character principle. If the president had been prudent enough to accommodate all 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria in constituting the board of the EFCC, we would have passed it on the 11th day of December. And when I objected that the Southeast and South-South were excluded from that important commission, that is saddled with the responsibility of fighting corruption in Nigeria, everywhere in Nigeria, my colleagues stood up and supported it. Even, it was rowdy, and when we went into executive session, proper reasoning prevailed, and we returned to plenary and stood it down and returned it to the president to reflect the federal character principle. Because the only way to preserve the unity of this country is by ensuring that no place in Nigeria and nobody in Nigeria is left behind. If you carry everybody along, there will be harmony, there will be peaceful coexistence, there will be a complete feeling of unity of purpose. So that confirmation failed. Aside from that, even when there was a seeming frosty relationship with the executive arm of government, this Senate particularly acted in the national interest. When the Senate had a resolution before I came, that following the disagreement between the executive arm and the legislature on the issue of appointment of EFCC chairman, the Senate resolved that they will not confirm any nominations from the president. That was a standing resolution here. But it got to the time when the members of the Monetary Policy Committee of the CBN, expired and they needed to be reconstituted. Those names were sent here. Of course, some people raised the issue of the resolution that anything from the president can no longer be confirmed until they resolve the issue of the EFCC chairman. The debates went from one corner to the other, but at the end of the day, the same Senate president who had been put on a very bad spot in public domain and blackmail was the one that appealed to all of us that this Monetary Policy Committee of the CBN is a very important committee for the smooth functioning and running of Nigeria. It is about the economy, to affect the economy of Nigeria. And he pleaded that these nominees should be confirmed. There was dead silence. People who were opposed to that action had to shift their thoughts. And we came back to plenary and approved those names. Subsequently, many names started coming from things that were not considered before. They started coming back, and all of them were considered and approved. So you can see that it's a matter of mutual respect. If the arms of government in Nigeria respect each other, governance will be seamless. Anything you bring will be seen within the realm of national interest, not muzzle flexing. In terms of bills, I'm sure the Senate President will give account of the stewardship of the National Assembly, particularly during the valedictory session. The number of bills that we passed here will be given out to Nigerians. The number of motions passed by the National Assembly will be given to Nigerians to see. I was active in plenary for 1 year, thereabouts. I was able to sponsor 2 bills.
Distinguished,
yes.
Before you get into your bills,
yes,
we noticed that so many bills passed.
I'm coming to that. 2 bills. Conclusively, within this short time. I was supposed to sponsor a bill for the establishment of Federal University of Education in Agony, in Anambra State. I introduced that bill around April of 2018, and by 28 November, the bill had gone through second reading, debate, referred to the Committee on Third Fund and Tertiary Education. Public hearing was organized, and it came back on November the 28th. The bill was passed by the Senate. That's within a record time. And just last week, the House of Reps confirmed the concurrence bill, passed the concurrence bill, established it, and that bill is going to President for assent. I was also able to sponsor a bill for the establishment of Theatre Arts Professionals Regulatory Council of Nigeria to help us curtail the damage quacks do to our theater arts, in Nigeria. The movies we watch, the Nollywood, and the rest of, there are all manners of people who engage in movie making and all that. So I sponsored that bill, and very happily too, last week Thursday, the bill was passed by the Senate. It's gone to the House of Reps for concurrence. So just within 1 year, I was able to do this. I had so many motions that also were taken. That is the way my colleagues from various parts of Nigeria were very active in the sponsorship of bills. So many bills were passed here, So you can see that the National Assembly intervened in so many critical areas of governance in Nigeria. The principle here in this 8th National Assembly is placing Nigeria first, the citizens of this country first, the impact government action will have on the economy, on the people of Nigeria, So I can tell you that I'm deeply satisfied having been part of this 8th National Assembly, that we were able to do so much, particularly in the last 1 year. I appreciate that before 2018, there was breakdown of relationship between the executive arm and the legislature. But what we did last year into this year will show you how serious-minded the 8th National Assembly had been. Today is the 28th day of May, 2019, and we are hoping to wind up on the 6th of June. The Senate is still sitting, considering bills and motions and things that are of urgent national importance. We're still sitting, and we're going to sit again on 30th of May. That shows you the spirit of work you can see here. So,
okay, yeah, distinguished. You just limit.
Take over national actions, which ought not to be. A lot of bills that were passed by the National Assembly and sent to Mr. President, he declared assent on the majority of bills. Every day, the Senate was enamored with executive communications conveying the claim of assent to bills already passed by the National Assembly. And I want to reiterate that passage of a bill is not a small activity in the legislature. The legislature goes through laborious efforts to get a bill passed. A bill will go through first reading, go through second reading, the lead debate will be presented on second reading, then go to committee, legislative work to be done at the various committees, depending from the sector the bill emanates from. They will do public hearings and bring a report to the Senate for consideration. And when the Senate receives the report and considers it and passes the bill, it goes to the House of Representatives for concurrence, vice versa. Because as they initiate their bills and pass and go through the legislative processes, they send them to the Senate for concurrence. It's only when the two chambers agree on a bill, pass the bill, that you now move it to the President for assent. There were bills that started in 2016 that legislative works were not completed, even as this Senate is winding down. But so many were able to go through these rigorous processes and transmitted to the President for assent. It's regrettable that after this dutiful work by the National Assembly, the President of Nigeria will withhold his assent. Sometimes, because President does not act on his own all the time, he has a legal department. He has the Attorney General and Minister for Justice of Nigeria. He has people who will go through these bills passed by the National Assembly and advise him whether to assent to the bill or decline assent. So I believe that most of the bills that were returned to the National Assembly without assent from the President were returned as a result of the misguided opinions and advice of people who work with Mr. President. So we have a whole lot of them. Some bills will come here, and the observations leading to the withholding of assent will be addressed again. The Senate will send them to a technical committee to consider those reasons why Mr. President withheld assent, and then they will be addressed, and the bill will be sent back, and the bill will return again. One embarrassing bill that the President could not give assent to was the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which the National Assembly acted most patriotically to help deepen democracy in Nigeria and help us strengthen the institutions that are charged with the responsibility of organizing elections, the Independent National Electoral Commission. That bill traveled to and fro, front and back, and the National Assembly patiently continued to entertain observations from the President or from the Presidency, working in a manner that everybody will be satisfied. The Independent National Electoral Commission was a major contributor to some of the reforms intended to achieve in our electoral process through that very important amendment. And you could see that as they were being returned to us, we work and address the concerns, send them back, they will bring it back, and throw it like that. And finally, when we passed it the last time, it was sent back to Mr. President, and up till now, he has not signed it. We consider that not in the interest of the nation, because our polity is suffering a lot of imperfections, and these imperfections were what the National Assembly sought to cure in our Electoral Act. You can see it now. After the election, many people are in the tribunals again. The reasons why people have gone to the tribunals are various, and some of those things that took people to the tribunals were things we tried to prevent in that Electoral Act amendment, but assent was withheld. At the tribunals now, you can see crisis of confidence brewing up among the parties. How do you prove your case before a tribunal? The Electoral Act Amendment Bill of 2018 took care of the issue of card reader, smart card reader, which we used to do accreditation. After the 2015 general elections, many open day electoral robberies that took place in Nigeria suffered proper judicial adjudication, because in some places, at some levels, the Court of Appeal will deliver a judgment after seeing what happened. But finally, when the matters got to the Supreme Court, for those that were able to get to the Supreme Court, it became obvious that the judgment was that the smart card reader was not known to Nigeria's electoral law. So that was why we had to put it in the Electoral Act Amendment Bill.
Distinguished, what do you think should be done to at least reduce the bickering between the executive and the legislature?
Maturity and mutual respect. If all of us are working patriotically, there's nothing that will separate the legislature from the executive arm of government in terms of having healthy relationship. Each organ has its own constitutional rules assigned to it. And if you understand that each arm will discharge the mandate given to it by the Constitution, there will be no conflict. So it will start from the disposition of people who get elected to these offices to understand that the executive arm and the legislative arm of government play complementary roles. The judicial arm has always been there as the arbiter between the executive arm and the legislature. When there is disagreement, you approach the court, and the court will look at the Constitution, interpret the provisions of the Constitution, deliver judgment that will be binding on all persons within the Federation of Nigeria. So you can see that these checks and balances were clearly put in the Constitution, but the operators, sometimes due to misguidance and overzealousness, cross the line and do things that they ought not to do. So I think what will be very useful in strengthening the relationship between the legislative arm and the executive arm of government will be maturity and mutual respect for each other.
Distinguished, there were a lot of political drama in this 8th Senate.
Yes, from confirmation. And that was what we considered on the 11th of December, even though there was a disagreement because of the fact that it didn't reflect federal character. How can you now conceive that idea that you need the Senate to confirm people who serve in that commission? Both the secretary to the commission, we confirmed him. Those other 4 nominees that came later, they were brought for confirmation. Why would somebody say that the chairman of the commission will not be confirmed by the Senate? It was with them. We were watching him. They took the mess and went away and went into the arms of the police outside. And today, nothing has happened on that issue. He was suspended, and I told some of my colleagues that his suspension was not correct. He was suspended for 181 days. I said, no, looking at our standing rules, the order, you can't suspend a senator beyond 14 days. I said it, and eventually he went to court. That's why I tell you that every arm of government has its role to play. The court looked at our standing rules and saw clearly that we had no power to suspend him beyond 14 days and ordered his reinstatement. And he came back to plenary and he was readmitted. He's here now, he's contesting for Deputy Senate President, in the 9th Assembly. But let me say it clearly, that it is because of lack of understanding on the part of some lawmakers that they try to bring the activities of the National Assembly to disrepute. That inversion of the chamber was utterly unnecessary. I understand the parliament to be a house where you lobby. You don't do things by force. You have the latitude to approach your colleagues for support to either an executive bill or member bills. You lobby. You don't take laws into your own hands. But because of the frustrated relationship of the legislature and the presidency, the executive arm, that spanned up to 2017 and into 2018, some people who I consider self-serving people decided to constitute themselves in the Senate as a President Buhari support group in the Senate. It was a very funny thing. And in one of our executive sessions, I stood up and I told them that this is most uncalled for. The parliament is an independent arm of government from the executive arm. So for you to come into the parliament and form a pro-president group inside the parliament is the most destructive thing any lawmaker can make. So I told them, you cannot do that. If you want to be in the executive arm, you go and contest to be governor or to be president or to be in executive authority. But if you contest election to be a lawmaker, if you come to the legislature, you have to defend the integrity of the parliament. So those people who were doing that to be noticed, you know. And every Wednesday when we have live coverage, all manners of absurdities will come up. You see people raising their hands, saying things that will please the executive arm of president. That is sycophancy. And they are the people that try to drag the image of this parliament to the mud. If you're not happy, you must choose for yourself where to belong. It's in the scripture. You choose for yourself the God you will serve. If you want to serve God, the living God, you serve the living God. If you want to serve if you want to be an idol worshiper, you choose it to the detriment of your own soul. So if you choose to come to the legislature, what you have to do is to help to contribute to strengthening the legislature, not to bring it down, you know. So that was the unfortunate thing that played out here in 2018, and it was because election was imminent. People were desperate to play good boys so that they will be able to come back. You know, all kinds of things happened here. I saw all of them happening. People will come to you to sign for them in their list so that you will return to the Senate during the election. I told them I won't be part of any such rubbish. You know, I'm prepared to go to the election, and then if I win, I come back, go through the primaries. I'm a very strong believer in due process. I'm a stickler to due process. I was national chairman of a political party in Nigeria for 10 years. I was national chairman of ABGA. I had gotten entangled with the anti-democratic forces in Nigeria from 1999 up to the time I now contested election in 2015 to come to the Senate. So I know all the lapses we have in our democratic system, you know. So if you're coming here, you're supposed to come here with that type of background and experience. So that when issues come to you, you look at the issue in the best national interest, not to please anybody. Because when we begin to take actions to please people, we abandon the people, we abandon the standards, we abandon things that will strengthen our democracy. So that action last year is most reprehensible, and it should not be allowed to happen again. And I want to tell the people who will be in the 9th National Assembly to guard the parliament very jealously. They should, as a matter of national responsibility, ensure that they protect the rights of the parliament. Because the parliament is the pillar of democracy in any nation. Going by the mandates given to the legislature in our constitution, you will see that the president of Nigeria cannot spend 1 naira without approval from the National Assembly. He cannot appoint his ministers without a confirmation by the Senate. He cannot appoint people to statutory commissions without a confirmation by the Senate. So the Senate and the National Assembly at large regulates our democracy. We give our democracy the meaning that it deserves, you know, by being alive and alert to our responsibilities. So let people not struggle to come to the parliament, to come here and fold their hands and answer them. You are a senator, you are a legislator, you are a House of Rep member. That name goes with some sacred responsibilities. And we need people who understand the issues of development, issues of separation of powers, issues of public policy to come to the National Assembly. And if you have people who have this kind of background and experience and they come here, you will see the quality delivery you will get. This National Assembly has a lot of great people. We have former governors, we have former diplomats, we have people who have served Nigeria in very exalted capacities in the past. So when we come here, we should put Nigeria first. We should put our political differences apart. What makes the parliament to fail is a commitment to political affiliation. Where you believe, you can belong to a political party. You must, as a matter of law, be a member of a political party for you to be sponsored to contest any election, to come to parliament. If you come here, your responsibility is to make good laws for good governance of Nigeria for the benefit of all Nigerians. So we should have that in mind. So the next assembly, the 9th assembly, I pray that assembly will be alive to its responsibilities and then know that the beacon of democracy is the legislature. If you take South Africa, for example, you understand the powers of the parliament. When Jacob Zuma was accused of corruption, he came to parliament and a lawmaker said he will not address the parliament, that he has been indicted, that he's a criminal. And he got up and was shouting that Jacob Zuma will not be admitted to the parliament. Jacob Zuma is a criminal. He's a criminal. You see, if you want to advance a democracy, you must have people who are ready at all times to act in national interest, irrespective of the danger to your personal comfort. That young man that embarrassed Jacob Zuma was eventually he was admitted to parliament, and he got up and said he will not speak. Jacob Zuma will not speak. It was like a joke. They put it on YouTube for the world to see it, and he embarrassed him and ensured that he didn't speak to the parliament. That's a corrupt man. Today, after the exit of Jacob Zuma, he's now standing trial for corruption, himself and his son. In Nigeria, this type of thing may not be easily done. So this is what we should do in our life in Nigeria as a democratic country, compare with what obtains in other countries, and know whether we are really standing here for the Nigerian people. Yeah. It's part of the history of any nation to have landmark dates when certain events took place. And when those dates are brought out for the nation to observe it, or observe those dates as important days in the life of the nation, it will always awaken the consciousness of the citizens towards events of those dates. June 12th happens to be a very important date in Nigeria, in the life of democracy in Nigeria. On that date, a very credible, free and fair national election was conducted, and that election was won by Moshood Abiola and the Social Democratic Party. That clean election was annulled by the military regime of that time. Events that came out of that annulment led to the death of Chief Moshood Kashimawo Abiola, MKO Abiola, led to his death. Because in the spirited struggle to reclaim the mandate Nigerians gave him, he paid with his life. He died. Nigeria was forced to an interim government that was created by a decree. We had interim government of Shonekan that lasted for a few months, and he was shoved aside by General Sani Abacha through a coup. And it took us till 1998 when some eminent Nigerians, led by late former Vice President Dr. Victor Umeh, had to engage Abacha and his military junta on the necessity to return Nigeria to civilian rule. You know, Abacha wanted to, he had an epileptic transition program, bowing to that pressure. You know, along the line, Abacha also died. You know, when Abacha died, Abubakar, General Absalom Abubakar, had to do a 1-year transition that led to return to democratic rule in 1999. You know, so you can now see that June 12th is a very important date. It's a landmark date in the life of democracy in Nigeria. A great Nigerian, very affluent, died as a result of that annulment of that election. He didn't die alone. His wife, Kudrat, was also murdered because of her advocacy in support of the husband. She was also killed. But today we have now had 20 years of uninterrupted democratic system of government. Howbeit the imperfections will still, witness. You know, so if Abiola had not fought for restoration of his mandate, paid with his life, and the pressure exerted on the military junta that led to their final exit in 1999, we wouldn't have this democracy of today. So that 12th June is an important date in the life of democracy in Nigeria. And that is why when it came here, we passed it immediately. It's a date that Nigerians should observe as a very important date in the history of democracy in Nigeria. Now that brings back to the issue of May 29th, which was being described as Democracy Day hitherto in Nigeria. I think there's nothing important about May 29th in Nigerian history. Nothing could be said to have happened on May 29th in Nigeria that we need to live to remember. So I believe that May 29th, something must be done to it. We must put it behind us, one way or the other, and then keep June 12th as our Democracy Day. Because that's the day that has a meaning.